My message this week is mainly for people in the mortgage and real estate world. So if you're not part of that, you can still listen in because it's kind of interesting, but it's really going to be directed to that group. We just had a very interesting settlement come out of Washington, D.C. It was $3.2 million for 4 title companies. And what the Attorney General, not the CFPB, what the Attorney General did is they went after these companies for the way that they handled their joint ventures and the way that they handled their relationships with realtors. I don't know how many times I have to say this out loud, but giving anything in exchange for the referral of business would be a violation of RESPA. And it can get more detailed. There's a couple exemptions in there, but for the most part, if you receive something because you're sending business to somebody, that's potentially going to be a RESPA violation. Problem is right now, RESPA violations are like everywhere. So many people are violating RESPA. If you read the case against a big mortgage company last year, you'll find that loan officers were handing out passwords to realtors to log into a technology and print out open house flyers and do some other things. And because the realtors weren't paying for that, the mortgage company was gone after by the CFPB saying, you provided those passwords, you provided that access, but they didn't pay for anything, which means you gave them something that offset their marketing expenses. And you did that because they're sending you the referrals of business. So these things keep coming up and they're everywhere. And this one's interesting because it deals with some joint ventures. Now the title companies involved have said, we're proud of our joint ventures. We don't believe they violated anything, but we didn't want this to continue. And so we're just paying the settlement so that we can move on and go our merry way. So there's no admission of guilt here. But the accusations were throwing parties on yachts for realtors who sent them business. Now, if you read the definition of thing of value inside RESPA, that definition is all-encompassing. It's discounts on things, investment opportunities, which are 2 of the things that were covered in this case. Also, any sort of gifts, any sort of trips, things like this. It's very clear how RESPA has stated the things you cannot give away in exchange for referral of business. But it gets confusing. When people see this constantly, you start thinking, well, could this even be wrong if everybody's doing it? And the answer is yes, absolutely, it could be wrong. I had somebody ask me in a class recently, they said, well, if this is all wrong, why are companies, set up to basically allow us to do this? Why are technology companies doing this? And my answer is because you pay them. Why would they stop breaking the law if you're paying them to break the law and you're the one that's at risk? So my challenge for you is very clear and specific this week. Look over your relationships. Look over the lenders you're sending business to if you're a mortgage company. If you're a real estate company, who are you referring deals to? Is there anything that they're doing that can be considered a thing of value back to you for that referral of business? And if there is, my challenge is please stop. I'm begging you to stop doing it. Because what it does is it creates a very unfair playing field where people who are doing it right are losing business to people who are doing it wrong. So if you're doing it right, you're probably sitting there watching me going, preach, like you're pretty excited about this video if you're doing it right. If you're doing it wrong, you're like, oh, come on, whoever gets busted. And you make these comments and I hear this, does it even matter? The answer is yes, it does. Because here's what happens in the end, and this is why RESPA exists. In the end, consumers pay higher prices. Do title fees need to be as high as they are? Or are they high because title companies are paying so much to mortgage companies and real estate companies to get that business? If they're paying a bunch and that's reflected in those fees, then consumers are overpaying for something so that money can be funneled in. One last thought on this is when I talk about how pharmaceutical companies do this, and if you look at, there's a John Oliver that's so brilliant where he did this, where he showed all these pharmaceutical companies that were paying to have doctors recommend that pharmaceutical, that drug. And they were doing it in basically the same ways we're seeing in mortgage. When I talk about pharmaceutical companies, all the mortgage folks that I talk to are like, yeah, that is so corrupt and that can never happen. And then I'm like, how was that party you went to? And it's like, wait, what? It doesn't seem like it's the same thing, but I'm telling you right now, on a different level, it is the same thing. I'm also telling you that when the Attorney General of a state steps up, and the CFPB wasn't even the one, that means multiple eyes are looking at the mortgage industry, looking at the real estate industry, and finding out, is there anything going on we should care about? Okay, one last thing. What we're seeing with the NAR settlement is we're seeing a lot of real estate folks get into mortgage, which is great. Come on in. We have a pre-licensing class for all mortgage originators. Go to knowledgecoop.com and check that out. We love that we're seeing a lot more realtors in the space because what they're doing is they're licensing themselves to try and do this right. What we're also seeing is people not licensing themselves and trying to find ways to funnel money from the mortgage company to the real estate company. So many of the ways that they're doing it are potential RESPA violations and would be under the same scrutiny as these things that I just talked about. So do it right. Let's create an ethical industry. Let's do things the right way. And let's hope consumers pay a reasonable fee for what they're paying for, because we're not funneling money out the back door. That's what I've got for you. My challenge is look at your relationships and make sure there's nothing in there that would not hold up in court, and then make a change to that policy, that procedure, or the way you do things. Have a great week.